Welcome back, everyone. And for our next panel discussion, we are going to get personal. You might wonder what I mean by it. Well, you will just have to find out for yourself. Enjoy this thought-provoking discussion as I welcome our panelists. Our first panelist is Sumit Srivasta, Commercial Director at Virgin Mobile UAE. Sumit is heading the commercial activities for Virgin Mobile in the region, while he builds and executes digital and commercial strategy for the organization. Sumit has over 17 years of experience across retail and e-commerce brands all across the globe. Pleasure to have you, Sumit.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And our next panelist is Russell Bache, Head of Loyalty and Technology at Virgin Megastore KSA. Russell is an experienced information technology manager with a rich history of working in the retail industry. He is skilled in SAP basis, management, IT operations, management, software, and technical support. Wow, that's a lot. Welcome, Russell, on board.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Kaushik Buttercharji. He's a head of customer excellence at Medcare UAE. Kaushik comes with 22 years of experience encompassing hospitality, BPO, and healthcare sector. Currently, as the head of service excellence, he plays a key role in creating CX framework and transformation for Medcare hospitals and medical centers. Welcome, Kaushik. And our next panelist is Owen Mcconnell, Commercial Director of Sales at Zendesk UK. Owen is a sales and leadership expert whose high energy and incredible expertise in customer experience has been driving sales growth for the past decade in a wide variety of industries and verticals. Owen has been leading Zendesk go-to-market for almost 3 years for Eastern Europe, Turkey, Middle East, and Africa. Welcome, Owen, on board.
Thank you very much, Aziza.
And this panel will be moderated by Abhinav Mishra, Director of Business Strategy at Martech Vibe. Abhinav has an extensive experience in the media sector in the GCC and India. Prior to Martech Vibe, he has worked with brands such as Bloomberg Business Week, Middle East, Khalij Times, and Times of India Group. Over to you, Abhinav. I'm sure it's going to be a mind-blowing discussion.
We'll have to wait and see if it turns out that way. But thank you so much, Aziza. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you to all our attendees joining us today for being a part of the CX Next over the past 2 days. And keeping in mind the limited time that we have, let's jump straight into the questions. I think when we talk about personalization and getting personal, I think one of the first things that comes to our mind is customer behavior, understanding the customer behavior for us to be able to offer that level of personalization. So I'm going to start off with this first question, and I'm going to start off with Russell. I'm going to start off with you. How does the quest to detail customer behavior align with the organization's CX strategy? Because everyone's talking about a single unified view of the customer. So how does it align with the organization's CX strategy?
Well, now personalization it's becoming the key of success for each and every organization, especially to make the customer feel the attention from the organization towards him and towards his needs and his expectation as a person, not as a customer who would increase the revenue of the company. You need to address his need very carefully in order to have him as a loyal customer, not as a one-time shopper. So if you do not create his needs in a very personalized and efficient way, then it will be a one-time shop and it's a lost customer by the end. So you need to monitor his behavior, his previous purchases, collect each and every data to build a 360 view over his persona and his interests, and then address them in a very personalized way.
Sumit, I would like to bring you in and ask you the same question. You've heard Russell's point of view. What are your thoughts on it?
Yes, absolutely. So I am very aligned with what Russell said. To me, and also to Virgin Mobile here in the UAE, personalization is about knowing your customer, right? It is not just about how that customer interacts, but how do they feel, browse, behave, act on your platform, off your platform. Really, the question is about, am I speaking to Abhinav or am I speaking to 500 people, right? Do I know what Abhinav wants? Do I know how Abhinav uses my products and services? And if so, what do I do with that level of insight to drive a better customer journey for Abhinav and service his needs better? So I think that's where personalization today has become table stakes, right? And I think it's a very crucial part of the customer journey and therefore your data and your digital strategy to really understand customers from the moment they've got onto your platform, what got them there, what were the incentives, what were their objectives or lifestyle relevance and benefits, and then plot that journey out to actually build longevity with them, right? And to be able to service them better.
Sumit, thank you. Owen, I would like to bring you in over here because the moment we talked about a unified customer view and we talked about understanding the customers better, you guys play a key role. So what are your thoughts on the same question?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think we have to appreciate that there's such a different variety of different business types, different verticals, different industries. And I think all of these businesses have their own challenges in how they want to view and adopt personalization. Even talking to Sumit and Russell backstage before joining this session, you can tell the different challenges that exist. But one of the things I think that we look at here in Zendesk is how do we put the pieces together? And what are the ingredients that allow personalization to take place? So if we look at kind of three core points that I would look at, do we have the technology to know your customer, to allow the one-to-one engagement? Secondly, do we have the process to combine the systems together in order to surface the data so that we can serve our customer in the way that we'd like to do? And thirdly, do we have the people, the staff embedded in this thought process in order to, when they surface the data, to be able to engage with that customer in that kind of one-to-one journey? So it's not as simple as putting an application, for example, onto a website and saying I'm doing live chat. It's got to be much deeper than that in terms of the thought process of the business. What we see here in Zendesk is the companies that succeed really well in this space are the companies that have a top-down driven approach, that it's part of the DNA now of the business to put the customer at the center of the business. Sumit mentions the word customer 360 and the 360-degree view. It's fundamental. And here at Zendesk, we're a facilitator of trying to surface all this information to give that 360-degree view for your business to be able to serve your customer. And this is done ultimately through omnichannel, which is something which people talk about on a regular basis. And omnichannel really is the key to this. Because what do we need to do today in order to successfully serve our businesses, whether it's Russell in Virgin Megastore bricks and mortar or Sumit, pure online retailer, is we must have that ability to serve the customer where they are. And this, we feel, is a key ingredient to really top-class customer experience.
Serving the customers where they are, I think that's a very, very good point, Owen, you've made. And I would like to bring in Kaushik over here. Kaushik has joined us. Hi, Kaushik. Good afternoon. You were listening to all of them talking about when you joined in about how to align the customer behavior with the organization's CX strategy. What I want to ask you is that we all know that the efforts to find a holy grail of personalization that offers a consistent experience across channels, right? It has been an ongoing effort. Now, where do you think the brands stand in that journey right now? Okay. No, unable to hear you. So while we figure out Kaushik's audio, I think, Sumit, I would like to bring you in over here. The same question I'm going to ask you is that, we see that personalization is an ongoing effort across organizations, right? And everyone's trying to make that a consistent thing across channels, which you could say a lot of brands are still struggling with, right? So where do you think, maybe I've answered that for you in a bit, but where do you think most of the organizations stand in that journey right now?
I think this is a complicated one, right? By industry, by segment, this will differ. Some industries, some organizations are ahead versus others, right? So, for example, native digital e-commerce organizations are far ahead. I would say banking, to a certain extent. I would say telcos are really getting there. There's a ton of opportunity, and I think the opportunity has been recognized, acknowledged, and accepted. And I think we're halfway there, right? Is what I would say. But the great part is there's a lot of opportunity there in terms of understanding granular information about your customer, right? So at the end of the day, if you look at how someone interacts on your website versus your app versus in a retail brick and mortar, it is brand first, right? So it has to be channel agnostic. It has to be specific to be one brand, one face, one experience. And that is where you have to drive the experience across different touch points. So, for example, if I was just to take a live example of people here and you were trying to personalize that experience, Russell at Megastore is selling an iPhone 13 Pro, which is now the latest device in the market that a customer wants, right? And now I know that Abhinav, who's a Virgin Mobile customer in the UAE, uses X device, has an average spend of Y, has other subscriptions. So if I can collate information around how you use data, what speeds you use data at, what are you doing with your data packages, what is your average spend, I can then, with some sort of predictive analytics, and this is a very, very simple example, of course, I can predict that if I was to tie up with Russell around a rewards program and be able to offer something from Megastore, something from mobile bundle deal, I could get you to engage more, right? And so that could be part of a linear incentive. We could then build out other off-platform incentives that we could drive through digital engagement, through different digital channels, right? So from a personalization aspect, really understanding where I spend money, where I interact with you, that is important. That is the commercial aspect of it. But a personalization model should not only focus on the commercial aspect of it, right? It should also focus on your value systems of how does it speak to you as a customer and your lifestyle. So if you allow me a very quick example of that, is at Virgin Mobile, we have a certain set of values, right? One of them being believing in a sustainable future, believing in an ecosystem that can thrive, and how do we be a part of this progressively important and pertinent topic? So in the UAE here, in the past 2 or 3 weeks, not only have we basically carbon offset, so we're neutral now, but we've also made I think great strides into building out a product where a customer is able to contribute a very small, I don't know, it's like $3-4, but you contribute 6 dirhams-ish. We contribute because we have skin in the game as well. And together we then basically contribute to organizations, certified bodies that are looking after or have pledged to be carbon neutral, right? So this speaks to values of a customer in the sense that this is a customer that is very savvy, very knowledgeable, very educated, and to them, there's a value aspect of a brand being sustainable. Not only have we done that, we're not just looking at that one aspect. We have gone and changed out, single-use plastic SIM cards. What does the packaging look like? Is that biodegradable? So end to end, but it speaks to the customer's values, right? And that helps them attach a mindset, attach their sort of purchase behavior, consideration, and awareness behavior to you as a brand. So tomorrow, when I do speak about other things related to sustainability or their value system, that also really helps. So it has to be end to end. I don't think it's just about the commercial aspect of it. And the last thing I'd like to say is, when you look at personalization, you have to look at it from a journey perspective. It could start in one channel, end in a completely different channel, from a conversion aspect and from an awareness and a consideration aspect. So the personalization piece is not very easy. It's a complicated piece to understand, the different facets of how your customer behaves off and on platform. But really, I think that emotional connect, speaking to someone's value and lifestyle relevance, is very important. And I would say that's more important than just figuring out how you get a transaction with a customer. It's how you build a relationship with the customer.
I think that's what we call an entry. I think Kaushik is here. Let's try if we can hear him. Kaushik, are you able to
Yes,
hear us?
yes, I'm able to hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, absolutely loud and clear.
Finally. So good things
Finally.
happens for the last. Okay.
Yes,
So
yes, we can say that. So,
uh,
Kaushik, I'm just going to cue you in. We were talking about, we were talking about personalization and how do we ensure a consistent experience across channels. And what Sumit ended the conversation with was he mentioned that when we talk about personalization, it cannot only have a commercial aspect to it. There has to be a value aspect to it as well,
true.
right? So I wanted to understand your point of view on it, and how do you achieve that consistency across channels when you talk about personalization?
Okay. So I think I'll start off with one key point. Today we all live in Insta culture. We want to press the button and we want things to happen. And thanks to technology, thanks to COVID for making this more aggressive. Two things have really in the background that I work. I come from a healthcare background. In healthcare background, you could have the best medical devices, you could have the best treating consultant, but the magic is created on the bedside of the patient, right? Now when it comes to personalization in my domain, I will pick up one slide from a book of economics. Surprisingly, very different concept, but this will tell you what it is all about. Two economists wrote a book in which instead of three sectors of economy, which we are commonly used to, called the commodities, the goods and the services, they mentioned of a fourth sector of economy called the experience economy. In this economy, Disney became the quintessential example of this economy. And they further went and said, going forward, all goods and services will become commoditized. Only companies that are able to create superior customer experiences will exist in the market. And today, you should see that as a reality. In the industry that I come from, is although we have got multiple platforms whereby I can enter my hospital, but still you will be surprised to know people are more comfortable speaking to a live agent when they want to book an appointment because they want to ask one, two, three more things to the doctor. We had the pandemic, we opened a new platform called as telemedcare, whereby you could do consulting at the comfort of your home. We started with that, but still at that point of time, the customer wanted to see the doctor, he wanted to have the pulse, feel, touch of the doctor. Healthcare is one unique segment which is a combination of digital. I will tell you what digital, whereby the doctor should be able to access all my records at any point of time, even from his house. I should be able to check for when I come to see a doctor, the doctor should be able to track my progress for the last 5 years I've been visiting the hospital. Their digital is the key. But when it comes to the interaction, personalization is the key. That magic cannot be taken away. Today, if my doctor doesn't spend 20 minutes speaking to the patient, the customer feels the doctor did not give enough time. He was more busy. For him, it was more like a transaction. Although in the 20 minutes, 5 minutes could be real value transfer, a transaction, and remaining things are emotional. But today, if you look at the businesses all around, whenever we make decisions about a healthcare brand, 70% is emotional and only 30% is transactional. So our industry is a unique blend of digitization in the clinical outcomes and personalization when you really touch the customer. So that is all that I had to sum it up.
I think guilty as charged. I'm one of those guys where if the doctor does not spend 20 minutes, talking to me, I'm gonna assume he comes from the Insta culture, as you mentioned, right? So agree with you over there. Russell, I'm gonna come to you now. The other question that I have is, when we think about the divide between going out for shopping for an experience and having to buy something which is more evident than before, right? Now, what I want to ask you is, are brands able to differentiate this? Because there's a difference when you talk about going out to shop for an experience, but buying something online because you need to. So where do we stand when we talk about brands understanding that differentiation and able to offer an experience accordingly?
I think we just lost Russell.
Yes.
Okay.
It's so Owen, bringing you in.
Yeah.
If you would like to start on this question.
Yeah, and actually, it's a really good example, actually, of what I was talking to Russell beforehand in relation to somebody like the Virgin Megastore and their challenge, because there's a traditional bricks and mortar business that also offer e-commerce, but we can see the change in the way that people now want to go back into businesses like the Virgin Megastore. They want to go back in for the experience, but the experience has to be on the basis of, yes, we like to browse the shop, touch physical records, for example, signing ceremonies, bands playing, but we still face the challenge of still, even in store, needing to know your customer. And by knowing your customer, whether you're in store or on the e-commerce, in the e-commerce space, the same thing rings true, is that the customer wants you to know who they are, what their preferences are, how they like to be served. And there's no kind of magic bullet to this as to how you actually achieve this. This is a learning journey of you understanding through your data what your customers actually are telling you. So we would know that different companies, and Kaushik is telling a completely different story of how the patient needs to be handled in relation to their expectations, is how do we supply the right channels at the right time to the right people? So Kaushik, you will probably find in your hospitals, younger people are probably in and out, whereas maybe people who are slightly older probably want more interaction, of direct interaction with the doctor. This is a lot of what we come across in Zendesk all the time, is making sure that the business that we're talking to is trying to adopt the technology that best suits their customer. And that is, it's not an easy challenge, and it is as I would call it, a learning journey. We understand from our CX trends reports how the shift has taken place onto, for example, mobile applications, and how messaging has massively increased over 36% this year. How SMS has exploded. I think it's up over 75% year on year. And some people would look at SMS as almost like an historic way of communication, but it's booming. And in other sectors, we see the social messaging area of it is up over 100% year on year. So, and that's not just the pandemic. That is the shift in behavior, I believe, of people seeing really good brands doing this really well, and now demanding that out of other brands as well. And the complexity, we can't underestimate the complexity. People sit with siloed legacy data systems that hold really valuable information, but it's not like flicking the switch to surface this information. Talking to Sumit earlier on, he was talking about the challenges that they have in relation to doing things, and the really interesting projects that they have ongoing to try and actually make this data presentable to the agent to talk to the customer.
So, Owen, I will take one very important point here, which I always face as a huge challenge. Today, when a Gen Y comes to see a doctor, he must have Googled the doctor, he must have Googled the symptoms. Sometimes the doctor gets into arguments, say, you come on this side of the chair and you tell me which medicine should I prescribe. So today, what is also happening, and thanks to technology in a very, very big way, you have to inform me what are you treating me for. There was one point of time where whatever the doctor said is the final word. Today, the new generation, there is constant challenge. Like, for example, still in one of the popular schools of thoughts in clinical education, we teach nurses, you don't reveal the results, only the doctor has the right to reveal the results. Today, every patient know what HbA1c is. Today, every patient know what a good blood pressure is. Today, every patient know what a pulse oximeter is. So today, the way I think it is also to do with the external environment is changing at a very, very fast pace. And we internally, we want to say others are not doing it. In my competitive set, I'm still doing better. So I will be like this. One huge challenge that I have seen here, people today in healthcare don't compare with healthcare as a competitor. They want to be discharged from the hospital in 2 minutes. They say in hotels it can happen. Hospitals, why should I wait for 4 hours? They want the hospital rooms like a five-star luxury hotel rooms. And thanks to all of this, because my job is there, because that's what I keep on adding in terms of the non-value add. So the expectation has been changing over past few years in a very, very rapid pace, thanks to technology, thanks to Google in a very, very big way. So today, if you ask me who is your greatest competition, I only say Google, because everything is just a Google away.
Absolutely. And I agree with you that while things are changing very dramatically, which has also resulted in attention itself becoming a commodity, right? And from there, I would like to come to you, Sumit. one of the things I wanted to ask you is, we see there is a constant focus on data privacy, right? And now also the need for the first party data, for organizations to move to first party data. Data privacy becomes a bigger issue. Not a bigger issue, but something that every brand should probably take care of.
Sorry, do you want me to start answering? Are you still asking the question?
No problem. So I was talking about data privacy and the use of first party data, and how first party data is important for brands to drive further uh,
Yeah.
personalized experience. Now, how do you maintain that balance? Because you need to access data to offer personalization, but at the same time, you also need to maintain the data privacy.
Yes. So this is of increasing importance the past couple of years, right? So first party data is where you need explicit consent, and so this is why you need an active user base that has given you explicit consent to sort of use their data at an aggregated level, right? So you can build cohorts, it can be encrypted, and that's how you use your data. But first-party data, you have full control over. Third-party data is now where there's sensitivity around, and data privacy laws should rightfully apply to how that data is not only stored and consumed, but also distributed across the ecosystem, right? And I think that's the right thing to do, because we should be protecting third-party data. There are other solutions today. So when you look at a cookieless world and you talk about conversion APIs on the server side, or look at what Google is trying to do with aggregated, encrypted cohort level data, that always existed, right? I think it's some companies that took it to the level of, we need to know exactly what you're eating, what's in your grain of food, and where you're going every 2 seconds. But having aggregated third-party data at an encrypted level is still available, was available, and I think it'll always be available, because that helps to understanding cohorts, then attracting like audiences when you build out behavioral profiles or personas, as you want to call it, and then basically trying to engage those, right? Just to wrap this up, I think when you talked about your previous conversation around the experience of in-store versus online, right? This also plays in there, because online, when you're a registered user and you sign up, you've been verified. We have first party data of you as a verified user. But then in store, you don't sign in to anything, right? Until you actually pay, or you're looking at a different price, or through loyalty. So in store, the experience needs to be as strong as possible, so that it engages you to the point of downloading an app or signing in and looking at more inventory. So, Russell's not here, but we Megastore and Virgin Mobile work pretty closely. And also, just from my background of Omni, I can give you an example where today you look at retail, right? Nike's got running tracks in their stores where you try on a shoe, you run around, or you play hoops with a basketball shoe that's newly launched. Golf stores, specialty golf stores, now literally have like golf swinging nets that are virtual, that measure your speed and your force and the accuracy, right? All of that is not when you've checked in. You're literally just standing in the store, but that engages you to the point to say, I need to look at this inventory. This is what I want to buy in terms of merchandise. And that then engages you to the point of downloading an app, registering, or if you already have the app, you just basically log in and you find the merchandise that you want. So from a brick and mortar versus a digital perspective, to bridge that gap into an omni-channel perspective, stores, the question is never whether stores will survive or not in a digital world. The question is, how do you use your stores to be the experience centers? They're no longer retail centers, they're experience centers, right? And I think that is what stores need to do. This is what digital needs to do. We're all part of experience. It's no longer shopping. It's no longer commerce. It's no longer behavior. It's all about experience, right? So, rightfully said, this is the experience economy.
So I think we all agree with you over here that brick and mortar stores are no longer a retail center, but they're more of an experience center. Owen, I would like to bring you in over here about when talking about their experiences. We know that the availability of data and analytics has changed the game when it comes to personalization, right? Now, how is it that a lot of brands still struggle to provide a high level of service despite having all of these tools and resources at their disposal?
Well, again, I think we have to be appreciative of brands that have been in existence for many decades, that have been highly successful in a journey of providing a store experience. So that's what those brands are used to providing. And that experience continues to get better and better. But it's very, very difficult then to shift an experience and take it from pure store to a hybrid of store and online. There's many companies that have done this very successful. If I think in region of Kamal Osman Jamji, and they've done this incredibly successfully with their brands like Naomi, Body Shop, and Lego in a region, where they're very much an app-driven business today. Actually, most of their interactions come through their mobile application. That would not have been the case 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It would have been the in-store experience. But they've now very, very successfully managed to in effect, to marry the digital and the physical. So that when you come into the store, into one of their stores, and if you're one of their registered users, they know who you are, they know that your previous procurement history, so they're now able to best advise you. But a lot of their customers, they know based on the brands they have, will still want to interact online. So they will still see 70% plus of their interactions going through WhatsApp. So there's a really, really good example of a business serving multiple brands where they've actually really adapted to what the consumer is asking of them. But it's the pure online retailer, of course, has the advantage that that is their DNA. How do you shift to that becoming part of your DNA? And again, it is about understanding the data and understanding your customers, understanding also your competitors, because you should always be looking at your competitors and what they're doing. But different regions, especially for multinational brands, behave in a different way. So they've got the challenge not only of trying to take an in-store experience and try to surface it into an online experience, but they then have the complexity of all of the different user types and the different geographies, and what makes that customer in that region feel comfortable. Is it self-service? Is it live chat? Is it, in a lot of regions, people still want to pick up the phone? And you'll find in some regions, based on, for example, if you're in financial services or banking, the trust is still not there to use the online and the digital first. So you'll find the traditional banks, for example, will still engage quite heavily on the phone. But we look at a challenger bank, and what's a phone to the challenger bank? Well, it's probably something they don't have, because their customers are used to never going into a bank branch. They are used to serving purely online. It's not as easy as it sounds, but I think there's a lot of brands that have been very successful in pivoting into the online, using the third-party e-commerce players and actually allowing those best-in-breed e-commerce players to actually be representative of their brand. So we've got to be agile in the way that we perform this shift. It's not like flicking a switch. It's something which is complicated. And again, we don't appreciate, I think, in a lot of cases, the legacy systems that are powering these businesses are not necessarily fit for purpose to suddenly transform into serving, for example, a mobile application. So there's a lot of challenges there.
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially when everyone's trying to probably look at solutions to just kind of do the patchwork. But what you mentioned over here, it makes sense, is you also need to consider the possibility of probably starting something from ground up. Maybe you need a complete new infrastructure and strategy altogether. As we have to wrap up the panel, I just want to get some last thoughts from you, Kaushik, starting from you. On the topic, offering personalization, any last thoughts from your side?
I think to offer personalization, the first important thing, don't follow standard operating procedures. They means nothing to customers. Every single customer is different. To offer personalization, it's very important to know your customer pretty well. Where digitization plays a very, very important role in terms of knowing your customer well. Now use this data, how they can convert this transaction into a memorable story. Remember, whether it's a bad experience, whether it's a good experience, the common link is a story. So ensure that all your customers have a story to share when they step outside your brand. And that is a secret of success, is what I feel.
Great. Sumit, any last words from you?
Well, I think all I'd say is that personalization today is table stakes. If you don't know your customer, you don't know your business, right? Because at the end of the day, your customer is your business, and it is a crucial part of your business. So really understanding the experience journey all the way from before the customer was actually an active member of your community and your ecosystem, all the way through their journey of how they interact and engage on your platform, off your platform, to the point of growing and scaling that relationship. Super, super important. I think personalization will take another turn in the next couple of years as you then ingrain into every touch point across all of the digital channels, all of the physical channels that your customer uses your brand. So very basic today.
Owen, same last thoughts from you. You heard Sumit, he mentioned personalization is going to change drastically as it gets ingrained. What are your last thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. It's inevitable. It's here. I think we see from here in Zendesk, really successful companies that have adopted a really successful CX strategy, first and foremost, have had a really strong vision as to what they want to do. They have put the customer at the center of their business. They have certainly gone out and looked at technology which they believe is fit for their customers. They typically have a top-down driven approach where they are putting the customer at the center of the business, and they're enabling their business underneath to be properly trained so that they can go through that transformation, so that when the personalization comes, the personalization might well be through chat, it might well be through an online, very clever knowledge base, or it might be for people that actually want to pick up the phone. But if we don't have the data underneath it to surface, then the personalization becomes a very, very big challenge.
Absolutely. I think that's the bottom line and the key takeaway. If you don't have data underneath to surface, I think beats the purpose of personalization or even having personalization. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Kaushik. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Sumit. And thank you, Russell, although we lost you in between.
Thank you.
I hope everyone enjoyed the session. Over to you, Aziza.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this really insightful and engaging session.